Hey guys, welcome back. Today's video, I'm going to be doing the requested video of an updated stretching routine. So let's not waste any time because this is a long video. Enjoy. Alright, let's jump straight into it. Starting off, I start with a little body roll. So tucking my chin in, I start to curve my back and roll vertebra by vertebra, sinking down. You can also bend your knees when you do this, which helps if you have like tight hamstrings. And rolling all the way down. When I get as far as I can go, I usually just sort of like hold my elbows and I do some little rocks to sort of like feel what needs to be stretched in my hamstrings. And rolling back up, I'm going to do the same where I'm curving vertebra by vertebra and I keep a little bend in my legs as I come up so I can really sort of like feel that curve. Alright, next up I'm going to do some little neck circles going from one side to the other in a little half circle actually. And then I'll do the back half circles going both ways. I'll have a little pause on each side and sort of just like feel where it needs to get stretched a little bit more. Alright, next I'm gonna bring my arms in some little swings, coming across in front of my body. And then I'll do going opposite directions, swinging my arms, and then swing the other way. Alright, and then I'm going to bring one arm in front in a little bicep stretch, making sure you keep that shoulder down and not letting it rise up. And on the other side. And then I'm going to do a little tricep stretch. Make sure you tuck your bum under and not let your back curve. And then swap to the other arm. Make sure you try and stand up nice and tall and not hunch over. Alright, and give your arms a little shake out. Alright, now I'm going to do some little, I don't know what you call these. They're like little arm movements where you go up in front of your face, your hand comes behind you, it strings and it goes out to the side. And then I'll also do that on the other side. These ones sort of just feel really nice to sort of like get some movement through my shoulders. Alright. After that, I'm just going to bring my legs out a little bit wider and I'm going to bring one arm over the top to stretch my sides. Lately I've been doing a bit of yoga and so I've been starting to incorporate some of their principles into my own stretching. So things like the breathing I've really been enjoying doing because it really helps to sort of like connect with my body and to really like sink into the stretches. For this one you can also have one hand on the bottom of your leg. And you can also attempt to do this stretch without that bottom arm and get in a bit of a core workout. And to the other side. Alright, and once I've done that, I'm going to come down to one foot and I'm going to hold the outside of my leg and I'm going to use that to sort of like stretch the outer side of my shoulder. And then we're going to sweep across to the other side and lean into the other shoulder. You sort of really want to feel the stretch through the outside of your shoulder and your lat. Alright, I'm going to wriggle my feet out a little bit further and then hang down here again with a little bit of movement to really get into my hamstrings. And when I've done that, I'm going to walk my hands out in front and come into a downward dog. I like to do a little walk here to really stretch out my hamstrings. I also like to push this one right into my shoulders as well to get a shoulder stretch. And then I'm going to bring one leg up and really try to stretch it as far up as I can, engaging my glute to do that. And then I'm going to bend that leg and I'm going to tilt my hips out to the side. I don't want to let my body and my arms twist too much. You want to try and keep the pressure nice and even through those two arms. And keep your body straight, even though your hips and your bum are twisting out to the side. And bringing that leg down. And bringing up the other leg. And bending it over. You really want to feel a stretch through your hips. And bringing that one down. And then from your downward dog, you're going to do a little curl. You're going to round your back and you're going to curl through into a plank, and then you're going to keep going into a cobra. You want to unflex your feet and point them and sort of like push them into the ground. And you want to think about pushing away with your hands to try and get your chest up nice and straight. If you can't do a full cobra, you can also do one down on your elbows. So stretching out that back. I like to do a little bit of like wiggling in this spot to just try and get into the parts that feel like they need an extra stretch. And then I'm going to go onto one side and stretch out my sides again. And then I'm going to go over to the other side. And then back into the middle. I'm then going to push back into a child's pose. You'll notice that a lot of the terminology I use is kind of similar to yoga, and then sometimes there'll be some words that I'll say that are like completely not related to yoga, and words that I've like picked up from the sort of like circus world. So pushing back into a child's pose, except instead you want to bring your bum up a little bit and you want to have your knees so not wider than your hips. You then want to try and like reach your hands forward and really push and curl your shoulder blades and lats into yourself and not letting them flare out. This is a great stretch for opening up your shoulders and your back. We'll then do a similar stretch that will only get your shoulders and not your back. And this is a really good one for opening up your shoulders to do things like handstands. So this time, instead of having instead of having a curved back, you're actually going to suck your core in and curl your back. And you're going to keep that while stretching your arms out in front of you and pushing your shoulders to the ground. Just don't let your back curve and drop to the ground. It's a bit of a weird one as you feel like you don't really like go anywhere. And after that, I'm then going to bring one hand past the other one underneath it and then put the other one on top of it. I'm then going to sink into that shoulder and push it into the ground. I like to do a little bit of movement here to really try and stretch my shoulders out. We'll then bring our hands back to normal and do that on the other side. Ooh. You can also twist your back in this one, as you probably just heard. My back cracked so much. Or you can just keep the stretch in your shoulder. This is also a really good one for sort of like getting right into your lats. Alright, and then coming back into the middle. This time you're going to take your arm all the way underneath at a 90-degree angle, and you're going to bring the other one. You can either have it right, your other arm can just stay where it was and you push this arm into the ground, or you can bring the other arm up and around to really help that upper back thoracic twist stretch. If you're really flexible, you can also put that hand on the same thigh to help twist you around. And untwisting to do the exact same thing on the other side. I think this is one of my favorite like upper back stretches, as I'm not very flexible in my upper back. And untwisting. All right, we're then gonna push back up into our downward dog and then curl over into that cobra. We're gonna flex our feet and curl back into a downward dog. We're then gonna bring one of our legs up and into our chest like a mountain climber, and then you're gonna wriggle that foot in front to come into a lunge. We're then just gonna hover here for a bit, really stretching out that hip. And then drop that back knee. Really think about pushing this hip towards the ground. You also want to make sure that you are nice and square. I then like to get a bit of a deeper stretch in this one and work through sort of my like outer glute by twisting my knee out to the side a little bit. You might feel this like in your hip if you like don't have tight glutes, so don't worry if it doesn't like stretch your glutes. For an even deeper stretch, you can also wriggle that foot out to the side a little bit and have your hands on the inside, or you can come down onto your elbows. For a really deep sort of like groin and hip stretch. And then coming up and and wriggling that foot back in front. I then like to push back and go into another hamstring stretch and do a bit of like nerve flossing, which is where you point and you flex your toe to stretch in this position. You also want to try and keep your back as flat as possible when you do this stretch and not curl over too much. Damn, Aussies are out. After this, I like to come up onto my knee and let me turn onto the side, ow, a little bit. Whew. I would also recommend doing this on like carpet or something soft, because this next one, it generally hurts your knee a little bit. But I then like to bring up my back foot, and I like keeping my front foot really close at a 90-degree angle while I do this first stretch. After I've held that one, I then like to wriggle my front foot out and stretch that hip back into the ground. And when I do that, you'll see that I actually can't keep my foot really close to my bum. If you can do that, damn, you're flexible. But I am not in this regard, as you can see. You can also swap your arms and bring your other hand down to the ground to try and get your foot closer to your bum. It actually really hurts today. And then when you're done, bring your back foot back down. Ow. All right. After that, I then bring my foot parallel to my body, and I like to do a stretch called pigeon pose. I think that's what they call it in yoga. But the idea with this one is that it stretches your glutes, can stretch your hips, and also it can be really good for your lower back. So with this one, your foot can be really close to you, or you can bring it more parallel to your body. I like to bring mine more parallel in front of me because I find that it gets my glutes a bit more. To get a deeper stretch in this one, you can actually bring your hands in front of you, or you can come down onto your elbows. And then coming up out of this one. Coming out of this one, I like to go straight into my splits on this side. With your splits, you also really want to make sure that you're driving that opposite hip down into the ground, as that'll help get your splits a bit more square. Try to do a couple of really deep breaths in this position, as it'll help you to relax into this stretch, because I know that it can be quite a painful one for people. And then coming out. All right, we're then gonna jump onto the other side. So bringing the other foot in front into our lunge. And dropping that back knee. Really trying to push that hip into the ground. Then when you're ready, you can bring your hand down to the ground and you can start to work through your glute and your hip by giving it a little move around. Then wriggle that foot out to the side and you can drop down into the deeper stretch. And then coming up onto your hands and pushing back into our hamstring flex. Now remember to try and keep your back nice and flat, and then you can also do a bit. Also remember to keep your back nice and flat. And then coming up, we're going to bring our back leg up into the hip stretch. Really trying to push and turn your hip under, as that'll really help you to feel the stretch through your hip. And then come out into the slightly deeper stretch. Ooh, yep. That definitely gets my hip a lot more. And then bringing that back leg down and coming into our pigeon. And then straightening out into the splits on the other side. Remembering to try and push that hip down to the ground. And then wriggling out. And then with your feet out in front of you, we're just going to come into one more hamstring stretch. With this one, really try to keep your back as flat as you can. And after that, I'm going to rotate my mat a little bit. After that, you're going to bring your leg out into your middles. And you're going to bring your hands out in front of you, as far as they can go while keeping a straight back. These sun's in my eyes. I then like to come over to each side and do a stretch. And do the other side. Oh, that sun is in my eyes. And then after that, I like to come up into my middle stretch, which you can roll into from your middles if you're flexible, but I am not. My middles are atrocious at the moment. Please don't judge. Also, I'm really bad at middles. And also, I'm on hardwood floor. And yep, hold that for a couple breaths. After that, I like to come into a little butterfly stretch and finish my stretch off. I also like to push my hips down to the ground to try and get a more deeper stretch. To also help with my middles, I've been really enjoying a stretch where you come up in a sort of like plie position and you put your hands on your knees and you want to think about like turning your hips like in as if you were like sitting down and not sticking it out and turning it out. Turning it in helps to turn your legs under, which helps you get better lines. And after that, stand up and give your legs a little wriggle out. And that's it for my full body stretching routine. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have any questions about anything, please let me know down in the comments. Also, if you like this video, please like because it really supports my channel, and subscribe if you want to see some more, and click that little notification bell if you want to be notified whenever I release a new video, which is usually once a week on Sundays, so stay tuned. Look out for next week's video where I'm going to show you a short arm and wrist warm up for handstands. And I'll see you guys next week. Peace out.